My name is Jamal Thompson, and at 67 years old, I never expected to be jolted awake at 6 in the morning while vacationing in Florida. The security company called about my Boston home. "Sir, your daughter-in-law Amanda is here claiming to be the new owner." 20 years of building my real estate business taught me to stay calm in a crisis. I just smiled and replied, "Let her in. She's about to get a surprise she never saw coming." Before I continue this story, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit subscribe for more real-life lessons. Looking back, I realize my life had been building toward this moment for decades. I started as nothing more than a construction worker with calloused hands and big dreams. 40 years ago, I was laying bricks and hanging drywall, learning every aspect of how homes were built from the ground up. My father always told me, "Jamal, if you want to succeed in America, you need to understand the foundation before you can build the house." Those words guided my entire career. I met my beloved wife Sophia during a downtown Boston renovation project. She was an interior designer consulting on the historical restoration of a brownstone that my company had been contracted to work on. The first time I saw her examining the original crown molding with such intense focus, I knew she was special. Her passion for preserving the character and history of homes matched my own. We disagreed about the appropriate treatment for the water-damaged library, and our heated discussion turned into dinner, which turned into 35 beautiful years of marriage. Sophia and I built our life together brick by brick, just like the homes I worked on. We saved every penny during those early years, taking calculated risks on small property investments until I could launch Thompson Real Estate Development. Those were lean times filled with long hours, but Sophia never complained. She believed in my vision and supported every sacrifice we made to build our future. Our son Thomas came along in our 5th year of marriage. From the moment he was born, I knew I wanted to give him opportunities I never had. Thomas was a bright child, curious about everything, and quick to learn. As he grew, I made sure to teach him the value of hard work while providing the education that would open doors for him. Unlike me, he showed little interest in construction or real estate, but his analytical mind and gift for debate made law a natural fit. I still remember the pride I felt watching Thomas graduate from Cornell Law with honors. My son, the attorney. Sophia squeezed my hand as they called his name, and I saw in her eyes the same emotion that filled my chest. Our boy had become a man who could stand on his own 2 feet, building his own path while benefiting from the foundation we had laid for him. Thomas thrived at a prestigious Boston law firm, specializing in corporate law. His career was flourishing, but his personal life remained quiet until 3 years ago when he attended a colleague's wedding. That's where he met Amanda Wright, a pharmaceutical sales representative with a dazzling smile and sharp intelligence. Thomas called me the morning after, sounding like a teenager as he described meeting the most amazing woman. Their romance progressed with a speed that surprised everyone. Within 6 months, Thomas proposed with a ring that cost 3 months of his salary. I remember cautioning him to take his time, but he was convinced Amanda was perfect. "Dad, when you know, he told me, echoing words I had once said about his mother. The wedding planning revealed the first glimpses of Amanda's true character. What Thomas envisioned as an intimate gathering with close family and friends quickly ballooned into an extravagant affair at one of Boston's most exclusive venues. The guest list tripled, featuring people neither Thomas nor our family had ever met. When I gently questioned the escalating costs, Amanda sweetly explained that this was her once-in-a-lifetime day and that Thomas had agreed to all her plans. I still recall sitting with Sophia during that conversation, watching her face carefully mask concern as Amanda detailed the ice sculptures and custom-written vows. My wife had always been perceptive about people, but her declining health had made her less willing to voice concerns that might create family tension. The cancer diagnosis had come just a year before Thomas met Amanda, and by the wedding, Sophia was focused on enjoying whatever time she had left rather than creating conflict. Despite the warning bells, I initially found Amanda charming. She was undeniably intelligent and ambitious, qualities I respected. She made efforts to ask about my business and seemed particularly interested in how I had built my real estate portfolio. Thomas appeared happier than I had ever seen him, and that counted for something significant in my book. The first real red flag appeared during the rehearsal dinner, when Amanda cornered me near the bar. "Thomas says your home on Beacon Hill has been in the family for decades," she said, sipping champagne. What a perfect place to raise your future grandchildren, don't you think? I can already envision updating those old rooms into something magazine-worthy. My home was indeed special. The 19th century Beacon Hill property had been my biggest personal investment 25 years ago. I had spent years restoring it with Sophia, preserving its historical elements while carefully modernizing the infrastructure. Every room held memories of our life together. The hand-carved banister still bore the height marks tracking Thomas's growth. The kitchen had been redesigned to accommodate Sophia's love of cooking family meals. And the garden? That was Sophia's masterpiece, a carefully planned oasis that bloomed from early spring through late fall. After Sophia passed away 5 years ago, that garden became my daily connection to her. Each morning, I would tend to her plants with the care she had taught me, speaking to her as I pruned and watered. The neighbors often commented that it was the most beautiful garden on the street, and I took pride in maintaining Sophia's legacy. My retirement plans had always been simple: enjoy the home we had built together, travel to places Sophia and I had dreamed of visiting, and spend time with family. I had worked hard to ensure financial security, gradually stepping back from day-to-day operations at my company while maintaining oversight of our investments. Life had taught me to appreciate what truly mattered: relationships, memories, and peace of mind. Thomas and I had always shared a close bond. Even through his teenage rebellions and college years, we maintained open communication and mutual respect. After Sophia's passing, that bond deepened as we helped each other through grief. We had a standing Sunday dinner tradition that continued after his marriage, though I noticed Amanda became increasingly irritated by what she called our boys' club conversations. Looking back, I can see how Amanda viewed me as an obstacle rather than family. She masked it well behind smiles and questions about my health, but her eyes always lingered a bit too long on the artwork in my home or the antique furniture Sophia had carefully selected over the years. I chose to focus on making our new family dynamic work, hoping that time would build genuine affection between us. I never imagined she was already planning to claim everything I had built as her own. After Thomas and Amanda returned from their honeymoon in the Maldives, I began noticing subtle changes in my new daughter-in-law. The warm, engaging woman who had charmed our family seemed to fade, replaced by someone more calculating and impatient. Her true colors started showing in small moments, like when she interrupted Thomas during family gatherings or rolled her eyes when he mentioned their budget. Financial strain appeared in their marriage faster than anyone expected. Thomas had always been responsible with money, saving diligently since his first law firm paycheck. Within months of their marriage, however, I noticed my son checking price tags and declining social invitations that involved expenses. When I asked about it privately, Thomas admitted that Amanda's spending habits were different from what he had anticipated. She grew up with certain expectations, Dad, he explained, looking uncomfortable. She says appearances matter in her industry, so the designer clothes and luxury car are investments in her career. We just need to adjust our budget, but the tight smile that accompanied his words told me he was trying to convince himself as much as me. The first Thanksgiving, after their marriage, revealed more troubling signs. Amanda insisted on hosting at their apartment despite the limited space. "We need to establish our own family traditions," she declared. During dinner preparation, I overheard her telling her mother on the phone, "Once we move into Jamal's house, we'll have plenty of room for entertaining. The dining room alone could seat 20 after we modernize it." I pretended not to hear, but the casual assumption that my home would eventually be hers sent a chill through me. Throughout dinner, Amanda made pointed comments about modernizing what she called outdated spaces in my home. "That formal living room is wasted space these days, don't you think, Jamal? It would make an amazing home theater room." Thomas looked increasingly uncomfortable as the evening progressed, especially when Amanda introduced one of the guests, a woman named Diane, who turned out to be a realtor specializing in luxury properties. "Diane was just telling me that homes in your neighborhood are selling for record prices," Amanda mentioned casually over dessert, "especially when they've been updated for contemporary tastes." The holidays brought more concerning incidents. During Christmas at my house, I returned from the kitchen to find Amanda in my home office, examining the property documents I kept in my desk. She quickly claimed she was looking for a pen, but the drawer she had opened contained only my real estate portfolio information. Her excuse about admiring the craftsmanship of your antique desk rang hollow when I noticed my folder of property tax assessments slightly ajar. Thomas was caught in an impossible position between his father and his wife. I could see him struggling to maintain peace while becoming increasingly aware of Amanda's fixation on my property. During one Sunday dinner, when Amanda made a comment about when the house is ours, Thomas gently corrected her. "Dad's house is Dad's house, Amanda. We have our condo." The frosty silence that followed lasted through dessert. Amanda's approach became more direct as time passed. "Have you updated your will since Sophia passed?" she asked during one visit, her tone casual but her eyes sharp with interest. "Thomas is your only child, after all. It must be comforting knowing everything will be secured in the family." When I mentioned my extensive estate planning with my attorney, she pressed for details about specific provisions. Her suggestions that I consider assisted living began when I turned 65, despite my excellent health and active lifestyle. I read an article about these luxury retirement communities in Florida. She mentioned during one dinner, "They handle everything for you, and you'd have a built-in social circle of people your age. Thomas and I could take care of the house, so you wouldn't need to worry about maintenance anymore." The suggestion was absurd. I still ran 3 miles every morning, managed my investment portfolio actively, and served on 2 community boards. My doctor consistently told me I had the health of a man 15 years younger. Amanda's transparent attempt to remove me from my home might have been amusing if it hadn't revealed her true intentions so clearly. The situation reached a turning point during a Thanksgiving dinner the following year. Amanda had again insisted on hosting, this time inviting Diane the realtor again, along with an interior designer who specialized in reimagining historical homes. Throughout the evening, Amanda guided these guests through my home, discussing removal of walls and updating that old-fashioned garden to something more sustainable. When the interior designer asked about the original woodwork in my study, Amanda waved dismissively. "All of that can be removed. We want something more contemporary once we take ownership." Thomas overheard this comment and pulled Amanda aside. Their hushed argument in the kitchen was brief but intense. I could see the strain on my son's face when they returned to the dining room. That night, as guests were leaving, Thomas stayed behind and asked to speak with me privately. "Dad, I want to apologize for Amanda's behavior," he said, looking genuinely distressed. "She's been making some assumptions about the future that we've never actually discussed as a family. I've tried to explain that your house is your home, not our inheritance to plan for." I appreciated his acknowledgement of the situation, but I could also see the toll this conflict was taking on him. "Son, your mother and I built this life to provide security for you, not to create family tension. But this house is my home, filled with memories of your mother. I'm not ready or willing to part with it." Thomas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know, Dad, and you shouldn't have to explain that to anyone, especially not family." The next morning I called William Reynolds, my attorney of 30 years, and scheduled a private consultation. William had handled my business contracts, property acquisitions, and personal legal matters for decades. He was also a trusted friend who had known Sophia well. "I need to ensure my estate is properly protected," I explained after outlining the situation with Amanda. "My son deserves his inheritance, but I'm concerned about outside influences." William understood immediately. "We can set up a trust with specific conditions and protections. The house, for example, could be placed in a life estate that allows you full control and residence for your lifetime, with specific provisions for its future use or sale." His suggested approach would protect both my wishes and Thomas's inheritance, while preventing Amanda from making any claims or decisions about the property. When the updated will and trust documents were finalized, Thomas was supportive, though he asked me not to share the specific details with Amanda. "It will just create more tension," he explained. "She already feels like you don't trust her." Despite Thomas's discretion, Amanda somehow learned about the updated estate planning. Her next visit featured a noticeably colder attitude. "I heard you've been meeting with your lawyer," she mentioned while helping clear the dinner table. "I hope everything's okay with your business." Her tone suggested everything was far from okay from her perspective. "Just routine updates," I replied evenly. "At my age, it's important to keep everything in order." The look she gave me made it clear she understood the subtext of my words. From that moment, the pretense of warm family relations began to crumble, revealing the calculating ambition beneath. The call from my old friend Gerald came at the perfect time. We had been friends since college, maintaining our connection despite his move to Florida 15 years ago. "Jamal, you need to get out of that Boston winter and enjoy some sunshine," he insisted. "2 weeks at my beach house in Miami. No excuses this time." After the increasing tension with Amanda, the idea of distance and perspective appealed to me. Thomas encouraged the trip as well. "You deserve a vacation, Dad. Everything here will be fine." I approached the trip with my usual thoroughness. Working with Atlantic Security, I upgraded my home security system with additional cameras covering all entrances and the garden. I changed all access codes and installed a monitoring app on my phone that would alert me to any activity. The technician walked me through the features, noting that the system would record all entries and movements throughout the property. "This level of security is usually for people who travel frequently," he commented as he finished the installation. "You planning to be away often?" "Just being cautious," I replied, not mentioning my specific concerns about Amanda. Thomas offered to check on the house periodically while I was away, a gesture I appreciated. What struck me as unusual, however, was Amanda's sudden interest in my travel plans. She asked multiple times for my exact departure and return dates, even inquiring about which security company monitored the property. "I just want to make sure everything's taken care of while you're gone," she explained when I asked about her interest. "Maybe we could water Sophia's garden for you? I know how important it is to you." Her mention of Sophia's garden, which she had previously dismissed as outdated landscaping, raised my suspicions. Amanda had never shown any interest in maintaining it before. In fact, she had frequently commented on how the space could be better used for an outdoor entertainment area. The day before my departure, I stopped by Thomas's office to drop off a spare key to the storage room where I kept some of Sophia's belongings. As I approached his door, I overheard Amanda's voice inside. She was apparently on a phone call, unaware of my presence. "The house will be available to view next week," she was saying. "The owner is going to Florida for 2 weeks. Yes, it needs considerable updating, but the location is unbeatable, and the structure is solid. We could list it by summer if all goes according to plan." I stepped back, processing what I had just heard. Amanda was already discussing selling my home as if it were a foregone conclusion. When I entered the office a moment later, making my presence known with a knock, she quickly ended her call and greeted me with her usual smile, showing no sign of the conversation I had overheard. That evening, I made additional preparations. I secured important documents in my bank's safety deposit box, made backup copies of property records, and called William Reynolds to alert him to my concerns. "I doubt anything will happen," I told him, "but if there's any unusual activity regarding my property while I'm gone, I'd appreciate your immediate attention." My flight to Miami the next morning brought a sense of relief as the plane lifted above the Boston skyline. Gerald met me at the airport, his perpetual tan and relaxed demeanor, a stark contrast to the tension I had been feeling. "Jamal, you look like you need this vacation even more than I thought," he commented as we drove to his beach house. "Work stress or something else?" "Family complications," I replied, not ready to fully discuss the situation. Nothing a little ocean air won't help put in perspective. Gerald's beach house was everything I needed, spacious, peaceful, with expansive views of the Atlantic. My first days were spent walking the shoreline, reading books I had been putting off, and enjoying Gerald's excellent cooking. Each morning I checked the security app, finding nothing unusual. Thomas called daily, though I noticed his tone seemed slightly guarded. "Everything okay, son?" I asked on the third day, detecting something in his voice. "All good, Dad. Work is busy, that's all." "How's Florida?" Amanda sent occasional text messages as well, each one containing strangely specific questions about the house. Where did I store the original property deed? Was there a particular routine for maintaining the antique hardwood floors? Did I have any relationships with realtors in the neighborhood? Each question seemed innocent in isolation, but formed a troubling pattern when viewed together. By the end of my first week in Florida, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease despite the peaceful surroundings. During dinner on my 7th night, I finally shared my concerns with Gerald. "I think my daughter-in-law is planning something regarding my home," I explained, outlining Amanda's behavior over the past months. "She seems to believe she has some claim to my property, or that it's her future possession to plan for." Gerald, who had worked in finance before retirement, understood property matters well. "Have you legally protected yourself?" he asked. "Yes, But legal protection only works against legal actions. I'm more concerned about what she might try when she thinks no one is watching. That night, I slept poorly, my mind cycling through worst-case scenarios. The peaceful sound of waves that had lulled me to sleep previously now failed to calm my racing thoughts. Something told me that Amanda wouldn't wait much longer to make her move, whatever it might be. As dawn broke over the Atlantic, painting Gerald's guest room in soft golden light, I had no idea that my instincts would prove correct within the hour, or that the confrontation I had been anticipating was about to begin. The shrill ring of my phone cut through the peaceful morning silence at exactly 6 o'clock. The caller ID displayed Atlantic Security, immediately sending a surge of adrenaline through my body. I answered on the second ring, fully alert despite the early hour. "Mr. Thompson, this is Marcus from Atlantic Security," the voice stated professionally. "We need to verify your status. Are you currently away from your Boston residence as indicated in your travel notice?" "Yes, I'm in Florida," I confirmed, already pulling up the security app on my tablet. "What's happening at my property?" "Sir, our motion sensors were triggered at 5:45 a.m. Cameras show a woman using a key to enter through the front door. She identified herself as Amanda Thompson, your daughter-in-law, and has brought several other individuals into the property. When our response team arrived, she claimed to be the new owner of the residence." My screen loaded to show live footage from my front hallway. Amanda stood in my entryway, gesturing confidently as she spoke to a man with a portfolio and a woman taking notes. Behind them were two men in work clothes carrying measuring tools. I recognized one of the visitors as the interior designer from Thanksgiving. "What exactly did she tell your team?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the violation I was witnessing. She stated, and I quote, "I'm Amanda Thompson, the new owner. My father-in-law Jamal has signed the house over to my husband and me as an early inheritance. He's currently in Florida, finalizing the retirement property he's purchased there. When our officer asked for documentation, she said the paperwork was being processed and would be available next week." The audacity was breathtaking. I watched Amanda leading her group into my living room, pointing out features of the house with the confidence of an owner. "Did she provide any identification?" I asked. "Yes, sir. She has identification confirming she's Amanda Thompson, and she knew the entry code for the front door. That's why our team didn't immediately remove her. Protocol requires us to contact the registered owner, which is you. I needed to make a strategic decision. I could order immediate removal, which would create a scene but might limit whatever Amanda was planning. Alternatively, I could allow this to play out while gathering evidence of her actions. Years of business negotiations had taught me that sometimes you need to let the other party fully reveal their hand before making your move. "Marcus, I want you to inform your team to allow them to remain, but maintain surveillance. Record everything, particularly any statements she makes about ownership or plans for the property. Do not confront her yet, but stay on site." "Understood, sir. Should we inform her that we've contacted you?" "No. Just tell her that since she's family and has a key, you're allowing access, but will maintain a security presence as standard protocol. I want to see exactly what she's planning." As soon as I ended the call with security, I dialed William Reynolds. Despite the early hour, my attorney answered promptly. I quickly explained the situation, watching my screen as Amanda led her group into my study. "This is a clear case of misrepresentation, possibly fraud if she's claiming ownership," William stated. "I'll prepare emergency injunction paperwork immediately and contact the police to file a report. In the meantime, continue monitoring and documenting everything. I'll head to the courthouse when it opens." My next calls to Thomas went straight to voicemail. I left increasingly urgent messages asking him to contact me immediately, wondering if he was somehow involved or completely unaware of his wife's actions. Through the security app, I watched Amanda give what appeared to be a tour of her new home. Her language, clearly audible through the system's microphones, was revealing. "This kitchen will be the first to go," she told the designer, running her hand dismissively over the custom cabinetry Sophia had selected. "I'm thinking white marble, open shelving, and removing this wall for an open-concept flow to the dining room." The designer nodded, making notes. "What about the garden? It's quite established." Amanda's response sent a wave of cold anger through me. "That's all being removed for a proper outdoor entertainment space." The old plants have sentimental value to my father-in-law, but we're practical about making this space work for our lifestyle. We'll start clearing it next week. The garden Sophia had lovingly created and that I had maintained as a living memorial to her was being dismissed as inconvenient sentimentality. I watched Amanda walk through my home, casually planning the erasure of 25 years of memories, speaking with absolute certainty about her authority to do so. The security guard, following my instructions, maintained a presence but did not interfere, as Amanda showed her guests around the property. When they reached the master bedroom, she opened closets and discussed replacing the hardwood floors with something more modern. Gerald entered the guest room with coffee, stopping short when he saw my expression and the tablet in my hands. "What's happening?" "Amanda has entered my home with contractors and a designer. She's claiming to be the new owner." I turned the tablet so he could see the footage of Amanda opening my bedside drawer and examining the contents. "That's brazen," Gerald said, placing the coffee on the nightstand. "What are you going to do?" "I'm flying back today. William is preparing legal action, but I need to handle this personally." I was already pulling up flight information on my phone. "Can you drive me to the airport?" "Of course. I'll help you pack." As Gerald helped me prepare for an immediate return to Boston, I continued to monitor the security feed. Amanda brought the group to my home office, where she began opening file cabinets containing business records and property documents. "We'll convert this into a nursery eventually," she was saying. "But first, I need to organize all these old papers. Some might be important for insurance or taxes." The security guard, maintaining his professional distance, reported over the system. "Ma'am, do you have authorization to access these files? They appear to contain personal financial information." Amanda's response was smooth and practiced. "These are family documents, and my husband and I are now responsible for managing these affairs. His father signed power of attorney over to us before leaving for Florida, specifically to handle these matters." This new lie was even more concerning. Not only was she claiming ownership of the property, but she was now alleging legal authority over my personal and financial affairs. The guard, trained to be cautious, simply noted her response rather than challenging it. As Gerald drove me to the airport, I received a notification that Amanda had brought in additional people, including someone with what appeared to be furniture catalogs. They were taking measurements of rooms and discussing delivery timelines. My home was being reimagined and repurposed before my eyes, all without a shred of legal right or permission. The earliest flight I could book would land in Boston by early afternoon. William confirmed he would meet me at my home with the necessary legal documentation and a police escort if needed. As the plane took off, I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead, determined to protect not just my property, but the memory of the life Sophia and I had built together. The flight back to Boston was the longest 3 hours of my life. Despite paying for in-flight Wi-Fi to monitor my security feed, the spotty connection only increased my anxiety. Each glimpse I caught showed Amanda becoming bolder, directing people around my home as if she had owned it for years. By the time we landed, I had missed an hour of footage but received a troubling update from Atlantic Security. A dumpster had been delivered to my driveway, and workers were removing framed family photographs from the walls, boxing them for storage. My home was being systematically stripped of personal touches under Amanda's direction. The taxi from Logan Airport crawled through midday traffic. I used the time to finally reach Thomas, who sounded genuinely confused. "Dad? I thought you were in Florida for another week. What's going on?" "Your wife is at my house with contractors, claiming to be the new owner. She told security, I signed the property over to you both. Did you know about this?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. "I had no idea," Thomas finally responded, his voice tight with shock. "I'm in court all morning, but I'll leave right now. This is completely unauthorized, Dad. I swear I knew nothing about it." I believed him. Thomas had always been honest, sometimes to a fault. The confusion and distress in his voice were genuine. "Meet me there as soon as you can," I said before ending the call. When my taxi turned onto my street, the scene was even worse than I had anticipated. A large dumpster sat in my driveway, already filled with items from my home. A landscaping truck was parked near the garden, workers unloading equipment. Through the front windows, I could see people moving freely throughout my house. William Reynolds was waiting at the curb, a portfolio of documents under his arm and concern etched on his face. "Jamal, this is even more serious than we thought. I've spoken with the police, and they're sending an officer, but they're classifying this as a family dispute until we can demonstrate criminal intent." "Let's demonstrate it then," I said, my patience exhausted. I entered my own home without knocking, William close behind me. The scene in my living room froze as everyone turned to stare at my unexpected arrival. Amanda, who had been directing a worker removing an antique mirror from the wall, looked like she had seen a ghost. "Jamal, you're back early." Her voice wavered slightly before she attempted to recover her composure. "We wanted to surprise you with some updates." After our conversations about modernizing, I thought, "Stop." My single word cut through her fabrication. "Everyone who is not family needs to leave my property immediately. This woman has no authority to commission work, remove items, or make any changes to this house." The contractors exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly sensing they had been misled. The interior designer spoke first. "Mrs. Thompson told us she and her husband were the new owners and had full authorization to begin renovations." "I am Jamal Thompson, the sole owner of this property," I stated firmly, as William stepped forward with property documentation. "This home has not been sold or transferred to anyone. Mrs. Thompson has no legal right to authorize any work here." One of the contractors nodded toward Amanda. She said she had power of attorney for her father-in-law who was moving to Florida permanently. "We have signed work orders." He produced a document bearing what appeared to be a forgery of my signature. William examined the paper. "This is not Mr. Thompson's signature, and no power of attorney has been granted. As Mr. Thompson's attorney, I can confirm that this document is fraudulent." The workers quickly gathered their tools, apologizing for the misunderstanding and making hasty exits. The interior designer lingered only long enough to collect her portfolio, her expression a mix of embarrassment and anger at being placed in such a position. As the last contractor left, Amanda's facade cracked completely. "You weren't supposed to be back for another week," she snapped, abandoning the pretense of innocent surprise. "Clearly," I replied, surveying the disruption to my home. Family photos were boxed up, furniture had been rearranged, and through the window, I could see that a section of Sophia's garden had already been cleared. "What exactly were you planning to accomplish before I returned?" "This house is wasted on one person," Amanda said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "Thomas is your only child. Eventually, this will all be his anyway. I was just accelerating the timeline on improvements that would need to happen eventually. By claiming ownership of property that isn't yours? By forging documents and lying to contractors?" William's legal training was evident in his precise questioning. "I was acting in the family's best interest. This house is worth millions in today's market, but it's losing value every year it sits with outdated features and an old man rattling around in it alone." Her words confirmed what I had suspected all along. Amanda didn't see a family home filled with memories. She saw a real estate opportunity. "Where are the renovation plans you showed the contractors?" I asked. She hesitated before retrieving a portfolio from the dining room table. The comprehensive renovation proposal included a complete gutting of the interior, removal of all original architectural features, and a modern redesign that would have erased every trace of the home Sophia and I had created. But what was most revealing was the final page, a market analysis for the property post-renovation, with an estimated selling price and potential profit margin. "You weren't planning to live here," I realized aloud. "You were going to flip my home for profit." The sound of the front door opening interrupted her response. Thomas rushed in, his suit wrinkled and tie askew from his hasty departure from court. He stopped short, taking in the scene before him. The boxes of family possessions, the disrupted furniture, and his wife and father in clear confrontation. "Amanda, what have you done?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but the horror in it was unmistakable. "I was trying to surprise everyone," she attempted, shifting to a softer tone. "Your father is getting older, and this house is too much for him to manage. I thought if we started the renovations while he was away, he'd see how much better things could be with us taking over." Thomas walked slowly through the room, noting the missing artwork and family photographs. Without discussing it with me, without his permission, he picked up a framed photo of his mother that had been removed from the mantel and placed in a box labeled storage. "This isn't a surprise, Amanda. I don't even know what to call this." William cleared his throat. "Legally, it could be classified as breaking and entering, despite having a key. The misrepresentation to contractors and security personnel could constitute fraud. The unauthorized removal of property could be considered theft, and the forgery of documents is definitely criminal." Thomas looked stricken as he turned to his wife. "Forgery? What documents did you forge?" Amanda's composure finally broke completely. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. Your father wasn't using this house to its potential. Do you have any idea what properties in this neighborhood are selling for? After renovations, we could have sold it for enough to buy a better place in the suburbs and still have money left for investment." "Sold it?" Thomas repeated, his confusion turning to anger. "This is my father's home, not some investment property. And you planned this without even mentioning it to me?" Amanda's expression hardened. "I tried discussing it with you for months, but you always shut down the conversation with sentiment about your mother's garden or your childhood memories. This house is an asset, Thomas, not a shrine. Your father is being selfish by not recognizing that." Her accusation that I was being selfish for wanting to remain in my own home, surrounded by memories of my life with Sophia, revealed the fundamental disconnect in how she viewed family relationships. In her world, assets were meant to be leveraged, regardless of emotional value or personal meaning. Thomas walked to the window overlooking the garden, where workers had already removed several of Sophia's beloved rose bushes. His shoulders slumped as he took in the destruction. "Those roses were planted by my mother. She nurtured them for 20 years. "They were just plants," Amanda dismissed. "The new landscape design will add much more value to the property." I watched my son's face as something fundamental changed in his expression. The confusion and shock were replaced by a clarity I recognized from his childhood, when he would finally understand a difficult concept after wrestling with it. "This isn't about improving the house for family use, is it? You've been planning to sell it all along." Amanda must have realized she had revealed too much. "We could discuss options once the renovations were complete. There's no reason to make decisions now about—" "Stop lying, Amanda." Thomas's voice was quiet but firm. "I want to see all the documents and plans you've been working on. Every single one." What emerged over the next hour was far worse than I had imagined. Amanda had not only planned unauthorized renovations but had been in discussions with realtors about listing the property. She had opened credit accounts in Thomas's name to finance the initial work, accumulating significant debt without his knowledge. She had even begun conversations with retirement communities in my name, using personal information she had gleaned from documents in my office. Most disturbing of all was the discovery that this wasn't a sudden plan. Email records showed she had been laying groundwork for months, systematically gathering information about my property, finances, and legal documents. The woman my son had married had been plotting to appropriate and liquidate my home almost from the beginning of their relationship. As Thomas scrolled through emails on Amanda's phone, his face grew increasingly pale. "There's correspondence here with someone named Craig about other properties with vulnerable owners. Amanda, have you done this before?" Her silence was damning. William, who had been taking notes throughout, looked up sharply. If there's a pattern of similar behavior, that significantly changes the legal implications. Further investigation revealed that Craig was Amanda's ex-boyfriend, who worked in property development. They had maintained contact throughout her marriage to Thomas, discussing various opportunities in the real estate market, including my home. Their communications suggested previous instances where they had pressured elderly property owners to sell or transfer assets. Thomas sat heavily in a chair, the weight of his wife's betrayal evident in every line of his body. "I didn't know who you were at all," he said finally, looking at Amanda with the eyes of a stranger. "Was any of it real? Us? Our marriage?" Amanda's response was cold and calculating. "We could have had everything, Thomas. Your father's property was just the beginning. With your legal connections and my business sense, we could have built something significant. Instead, you're choosing sentimentality over opportunity, just like him." In that moment, I felt a profound sadness for my son, but also a surge of pride. Despite the shock and pain, he was standing firm for what was right. The values Sophia and I had tried to instill in him had taken root more deeply than I had realized. As the reality of her situation became clear, Amanda's tactics shifted from denial to threats. "You can't prove I did anything illegal. I used a key I was given." I never signed any documents claiming ownership. It's your word against mine, and I'll make sure everyone knows how you refuse to help your aging father transition to appropriate housing. William's professional demeanor never wavered. Actually, Mrs. Thompson, the security system recorded everything you said and did in this house today, including your statements to contractors claiming ownership and your admission of the planned sale. Combined with the forged documents and unauthorized financial accounts, there's more than enough evidence for criminal charges. The arrival of a police officer, summoned earlier by William, brought the confrontation to its inevitable conclusion. After reviewing the evidence and taking statements, the officer advised that formal charges could be filed if I wished to pursue them. Looking at my son's devastated face, I made a decision based on family rather than justice. For now, I want her removed from my property with a formal trespass warning. The rest we'll handle as a family matter, at least initially. As Amanda was escorted out, still protesting her innocence and threatening legal action, Thomas remained seated, staring at the wedding ring on his finger as if seeing it for the first time. The home that had once been filled with love and memories now stood partially dismantled, a physical manifestation of the broken trust that would take far longer to repair than any garden or wall. The days following Amanda's removal from my home unfolded in a blur of legal consultations, property damage assessments, and emotional conversations with Thomas. My son moved into his old room temporarily, unable to return to the apartment he had shared with Amanda after discovering the extent of her deception. William Reynolds arranged an emergency meeting at his office the morning after the confrontation. "We have several legal paths available," he explained as we sat in his wood-paneled conference room. Thomas looked exhausted beside me, having barely slept. "The evidence supports charges of attempted fraud, forgery, unauthorized access to financial information, and identity theft." "Identity theft?" Thomas asked. William slid several documents across the table. "Amanda opened 3 credit cards and a line of credit in your name without your knowledge or consent. The total liability currently stands at just over $87,000. Thomas paled. "That's not possible. I monitor my credit report. The statements were electronic, sent to an email account created in your name but controlled by Amanda. She appears to have significant experience in financial manipulation." This revelation led to a deeper investigation into Amanda's background. What emerged was a disturbing pattern of similar behavior in previous relationships. Before meeting Thomas, she had been involved with 2 other professional men, each relationship ending abruptly after financial irregularities were discovered. In one case, an ex-partner had paid a settlement rather than pursue legal action that would have damaged his professional reputation. "She targeted me," Thomas said quietly, as we reviewed the investigator's findings. "My position at the firm, my connection to your real estate holdings, it was never about me at all." The police report we filed documented the attempted fraud and unauthorized entry, creating an official record without immediately pressing charges. The responding officer had been thorough, photographing the forged documents and recording statements from contractors who had been misled about Amanda's authority. Most disturbing was the discovery of additional financial improprieties in Thomas and Amanda's joint accounts. Money Thomas thought was going toward their mortgage, and investments had been systematically diverted to accounts only Amanda could access. Their supposedly joint financial planning had been a carefully constructed facade hiding her true activities. A family meeting became necessary to explain the situation to concerned relatives. My brother Marcus and his wife flew in from Chicago, and Thomas's cousins gathered in my partially restored living room as we outlined the events. Amanda's parents, who had seemed so proud and proper at the wedding, were notably absent, refusing to return calls after being informed of their daughter's actions. "We had no idea," Amanda's mother finally said when Thomas reached her directly, "but I can't say I'm entirely surprised. There were incidents in her youth, situations with money that didn't add up. We hoped she had outgrown those tendencies." The conversation ended with awkward apologies and a clear indication they wanted no part in the legal aftermath. Thomas moved through these days like a man underwater, going through necessary motions while emotionally disconnected. At night, I would hear him pacing in his old room, the weight of betrayal keeping him from rest. During one particularly difficult evening, he joined me in the kitchen where I was making tea. "I should have seen it coming," he said, staring into the mug I handed him. "There were so many signs. Love makes us blind to things we might otherwise notice," I replied, thinking of how Sophia had always been the more perceptive one in our relationship. Don't blame yourself for believing in your marriage. It wasn't just the marriage. I missed how she spoke about your house, your things, how she calculated value in dollars rather than meaning. He looked up, his eyes tired but clear. I filed for separation. The divorce papers will follow once we untangle the financial mess. The restraining order process began when Amanda started sending threatening messages after being blocked from accessing their joint accounts. Her initial text to Thomas expressed remorse and pleas for understanding, but quickly devolved into accusations and threats when those weren't effective. If you do this, I'll make sure everyone at your firm knows what kind of man you really are, one message read. Your perfect reputation won't survive what I can tell them. When these threats didn't produce the desired result, she appeared unexpectedly at my home one evening, demanding to speak with Thomas and becoming belligerent when refused entry. The police responded promptly, issuing a temporary no-contact order that was later formalized through court proceedings. Amanda was legally prohibited from approaching either my property or Thomas's workplace, a restriction that seemed to fuel rather than diminish her determination. Her attempts to turn family members against me began with carefully crafted emails to relatives, painting herself as the victim of an overbearing father-in-law who had never accepted her. Jamal has always controlled Thomas with his money and influence, she wrote to Thomas's cousin. Now he's forcing him to choose between his wife and his inheritance. These attempts largely failed, as family members who had witnessed our relationship over years saw through the manipulation. One aunt responded directly to Amanda, copying all recipients. I've known Jamal for 40 years. He welcomed you with open arms and has never used money to control anyone. Your actions speak for themselves. Financial fraud investigators became involved when we discovered Amanda had attempted to access my investment accounts using personal information gleaned from documents in my home office. The bank's security protocols had flagged the unusual access attempts, preventing actual theft, but the intent was clear and documented. Through all of this, Thomas struggled with profound guilt. I brought her into our family, he said during one particularly difficult evening. I gave her access to you, to our home, to everything we value. You couldn't have known, I assured him. She fooled everyone, not just you. Not everyone. Mom would have seen through her immediately. He smiled sadly. She always could spot someone who wasn't genuine. He was right. Sophia had possessed an uncanny ability to assess character, often forming impressions that proved accurate long before evidence confirmed them. I had relied on her judgment throughout our marriage, and in her absence, perhaps both Thomas and I had become more vulnerable to someone like Amanda. The investigation eventually uncovered Amanda's connection to a previous relationship that had ended under similar circumstances. Her former partner, a surgeon named Dr. Michael Greenfield, had discovered her attempting to transfer ownership of his vacation property by forging his signature. Rather than risk professional embarrassment, he had ended the relationship quietly, paying a settlement in exchange for her silence and departure. Dr. Greenfield contacted Thomas after learning of our situation through mutual connections. I should have filed charges, he admitted during their conversation. Maybe then she wouldn't have been able to do this to someone else. I'm sorry I chose the easy way out. This confirmation of a pattern changed the trajectory of our response. What had begun as a private family matter now clearly involved a serial offender who would likely continue targeting others, if not stopped. After careful consideration and consultation with William, we made the difficult decision to pursue criminal charges. The strain of these proceedings took its toll on everyone. Thomas took a leave of absence from his firm, unable to focus on client matters while dealing with the personal and legal fallout. I delayed my return to Florida, unwilling to leave my son alone during this crisis. Family members stepped in to help restore my home, removing the dumpster, returning displaced items, and beginning the process of replanting Sophia's garden. Through it all, I was reminded daily of the strength of true family bonds, not those forged through legal documents or marriage certificates, but the deep connections built through years of shared experiences, mutual respect, and genuine care. As painful as this ordeal had been, it had also revealed the unshakable foundation Sophia and I had created in our son, whose moral compass remained true even when his heart was breaking. 6 months after the morning alarm that had changed everything, I sat in the courtroom as Amanda accepted a plea agreement for multiple charges of fraud, forgery, and identity theft. The prosecutor had built a compelling case, strengthened by evidence from both our situation and previous incidents that came to light during the investigation. Rather than risk a trial and potential incarceration, she agreed to probation, financial restitution, and mandatory counseling. Thomas watched the proceedings with a composed expression that belied the emotional turmoil of the past months. The divorce papers had been filed 3 months earlier, initiating the long process of legally ending a marriage that had, in many ways, been built on false pretenses from the beginning. The financial disentanglement proved complex, with Amanda's unauthorized debts requiring extensive documentation to remove from Thomas's credit record. With William's guidance, I had completely revised my estate planning, creating a comprehensive trust with ironclad protections. While Thomas remained my primary beneficiary, the new arrangement included specific provisions about property use, transfer restrictions, and third-party access limitations that would prevent any future attempts at manipulation. "The house will remain in the family trust during your lifetime," William explained as we finalized the documents. "After that, Thomas will have lifetime use rights, but the property itself will be protected from any claims by future spouses or creditors. It's as bulletproof as we can make it." The healing between father and son came through many late-night conversations, often sitting in Sophia's partially restored garden. Thomas carried the weight of having brought Amanda into our lives, while I processed my own guilt at not having been more perceptive about her true nature. "I should have trusted my instincts earlier," I admitted during one such evening. "There were signs from the beginning that something wasn't right, but I dismissed them because I wanted you to be happy. And I ignored red flags because I was so caught up in the idea of having found someone special," Thomas replied. We both missed what Mom would have seen immediately. That truth led to laughter, then to stories about Sophia's uncanny ability to read people, and finally to the kind of healing reminiscence that had been absent in the months of legal proceedings and damage control. We remembered her wisdom, her warmth, and the values she had instilled in our family, values that had ultimately guided us through this crisis. New security systems transformed my home into a digital fortress, with biometric locks, comprehensive camera coverage, and alerts for any unusual activity. What might have seemed excessive before now represented necessary peace of mind. The physical security mirrored the legal safeguards we had put in place, creating layers of protection for the home and legacy Sophia and I had built. The garden became a symbol of renewal as spring arrived. Thomas and I worked together each weekend, replanting the roses Amanda had removed and adding new varieties Sophia would have loved. "Mom would approve of the additions," Thomas said, as we planted a particularly vibrant climbing rose. "She always said gardens should evolve, not just be preserved." He was right. Sophia had viewed our home as a living entity, not a museum. She would have wanted us to move forward, incorporating new elements while honoring what came before. That philosophy extended beyond the garden to our lives as well, guiding how we processed and moved beyond the betrayal we had experienced. 1 year after Amanda's attempted takeover, my home stood as a testament to resilience. The physical damage had been repaired, the garden was flourishing once more, and new security measures ensured peace of mind. More importantly, the emotional wounds had begun to heal, leaving behind wisdom rather than bitterness. My perspective on wealth, family, and legacy had fundamentally shifted through this experience. The material assets I had spent decades building mattered far less than the values and relationships they were meant to support. I began the process of simplifying my holdings, focusing on what truly mattered rather than continued accumulation. Thomas emerged from the ordeal changed, but ultimately stronger. The professional sabbatical he had taken allowed time for reflection and reassessment of his own priorities. When he returned to his law practice, it was with a new focus on estate protection and elder law, using his personal experience to help others safeguard their legacies. "I can spot the warning signs now," he told me, after helping an elderly client restructure her affairs to protect against a suspiciously attentive nephew. "It's like having a sixth sense for financial predators." His personal life took longer to rebuild. The betrayal had left understandable trust issues, but gradually he began to open himself to new connections. He approached dating with careful discernment rather than the whirlwind enthusiasm that had characterized his relationship with Amanda. When he eventually mentioned a colleague named Rachel, who shared his interest in gardening, I noted the thoughtful way he described their slowly developing friendship. "Mom would approve," I said simply, earning a knowing smile. Amanda made one attempt at reconciliation about 18 months after the court proceedings. Her probation terms completed, she reached out to Thomas with a lengthy email expressing remorse and requesting a meeting to make amends. After careful consideration and consultation with his therapist, Thomas declined. True remorse would have emerged much earlier, he explained when sharing his decision. This feels like another attempt at manipulation, not genuine accountability. His ability to maintain boundaries while processing his own healing impressed me. The boy I had raised had become a man who could face difficult truths without losing his capacity for compassion, exactly as Sophia and I had hoped. My own journey led to a deeper appreciation for the community I had built over decades. Friends like Gerald, who had supported me during the initial crisis, became even more important as I restructured my life. Professional relationships with people like William Reynolds transcended business to become genuine friendships based on shared values and mutual respect. The material possessions that Amanda had coveted revealed themselves as simply the backdrop for what truly mattered: the memories they contained, the values they represented, and the legacy they would one day carry forward. The house remained important, not for its market value, but for the life it had witnessed and sheltered. As I sit here now, watching the sunset paint my living room in the same golden light that Sophia and I had admired for decades, I find myself reflecting on the lessons this ordeal has taught me. Trust your instincts when someone's behavior raises concerns. Protect what matters legally as well as emotionally. Remember that true wealth lies in relationships built on genuine care rather than material interest. Most importantly, I've learned that the legacy we leave isn't found in property deeds or bank accounts, but in the values we instill in those who come after us. Thomas's moral compass never wavered despite the pressure and betrayal he experienced. That, more than any property or possession, is the true inheritance Sophia and I gave our son. For those of you watching who may be facing similar situations or concerns about family members with questionable intentions, I encourage you to take protective legal measures before they become necessary. Have those difficult conversations about estate planning while relationships are strong. And always trust your instincts when something doesn't feel right, even when the person raising concerns is family by marriage. What's your experience with protecting family legacies? Have you encountered someone who valued possessions over relationships? Share your stories in the comments below, and if this account helped you in any way, please like and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows me to continue sharing these life lessons that might help others avoid similar situations. Remember, protecting your legacy isn't selfish, it's an act of love for those who truly deserve to receive it. Thank you for listening, and may your own family bonds be built on genuine care rather than material interest.